is the first one. Got some. What about who's been here? Throw up some emojis if you've been to one of our other events in AltSpace or Mozilla Hubs. Oh, it looks like we got a pretty good mix of veterans and first timers. Awesome. Well, we really appreciate your support. We've got some fantastic speakers lined up today, and we hope that you'll all stick around to mingle afterward. Got kind of a fun after party and some cool 3D assets for you to explore. So please stick around for that. And we're just going to give 2 or 3 minutes here for people to arrive, and then we will officially get started. And hello to those of you joining us on the live stream. I believe we are live on YouTube now as well. We are going to have a time for audience Q&A here in AltSpace. And if those of you from the live stream would like to submit any questions, just go ahead and do that via Twitter and tag the WXR Fund, hashtag WXR 5G Labs. And we will try to keep an eye on those questions as well. And just a reminder to all our speakers and audience, please remain muted if you are not on the stage presenting. Thank you.
And have you seen Melissa?
I have not seen Melissa. Let me just take a look here. Did she?
She was here.
She was, yes, I definitely did see her before. I wonder if, I'm not seeing her on the host panel. She may have dropped off. All right, well, welcome to the early crowd here. Thank you for joining us today for a conversation on creative collaboration. We've got a good group in AltSpace filling in, and hello to those of you on the YouTube live stream as well. This was a really popular event, so I'm looking forward to talking to all of you. We are going to have a little mingle afterward for those of us in AltSpace, so please stick around for that, get a chance to chat with the speakers and explore some of their work in greater detail. And for those of you joining us on YouTube, you may not have heard, if you'd like to submit questions, please engage with us on Twitter and tag the WXR Fund and hashtag WXR 5G Labs, and we will do our best to incorporate some of your questions and thoughts as well. So we're going to go ahead and get started here. I have Andrew Zarek here with me from Verizon 5G Labs. And Andrew, would you like to say a few words of welcome?
Sure thing. Thank you, and welcome everybody to our event. My name is Andrew Zarek. I'm the ecosystem partnerships on Verizon's 5G Lab team. So my team is all event activity across all 6 of our 5G labs. So we have 5 5G labs in US and one in London. So we use these labs to actively explore what 5G might unlock for a wide range of industries and technologies like XR technologies, which is what we're discussing today. So today's event is all about the future of creative collaboration, and we'll also touch a bit on what 5G might mean for the future of creative collaboration. And you'll learn a bit about new tools for consumers and to enable creativity, but also new tools that will completely change enterprise collaboration in areas like architecture as well. So this is actually our third event in VR in full. It's a really, really unique experience if you guys haven't had a chance to join an event in VR, and we've been trying to get better at actually thinking in VR as opposed to just slides. And obviously we have slides too, but when you're participating in this event, what we mean by thinking about VR is things like this over here. So we brought in some custom 3D objects that will help showcase some of the tools that we're thinking about, and we hope that you stick around even after the speakers are done, because you have time to meet the speakers and also meet one another. We'll unmute you guys, and we'll have breakout rooms, a kind of mingling area, and a few surprises along the way. So thanks again for coming. If you want to emoji clap one more time to get the speakers hyped up, please do it. And we're really looking forward to today's event. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Thanks, Andrew. And yes, as Andrew said, we're really trying to kind of push the boundaries of how we think about hosting in VR. And I know many of you in the audience are veterans today and can appreciate a lot of what's unique about a VR experience versus, just our traditional video conference. So I hope you have fun with this. I hope you get to know each other and the speakers afterward. For those of you who weren't around when I said hello, I'm Martina Welkoff from the WXR Fund. I'm going to be your moderator today. WXR is a venture fund focused on women-led spatial computing. So we are looking for early stage companies in virtual and augmented reality with gender diverse teams. We're really focused on building an inclusive foundation for the XR industry so that we can make sure we have more diverse voices included in this next computing paradigm. So without further ado, I would like to welcome our first panel to this stage. We have three incredible platforms represented today, and the women who are leading these efforts are going to tell you a bit about what they're building, and then we're going to have a deeper conversation about collaboration and about what the future of collaboration could look like. So Clay, Melissa, Andrea, and Inga, if you could join me on stage, and another round of applause for our fantastic speakers today. Thank you. Am I blocking the way? Sorry, let me get out of the way here.
Figuring this out as we go.
Nice. All right, great energy from the crowd. Do we have Melissa? Did Melissa?
I'm right. Yeah, she's here.
Oh, hi.
She's right
Sorry.
next to
There
you,
you are. Yeah, there we go. I'll move over. There we go. Oh, the fun.
Yeah, we almost lost Melissa there.
All right. Glad she made it back. Fantastic. So I'm just going to have each of you talk a bit about what you're building first, so the audience can get a better understanding of the products, and then we will have a deeper level conversation. So Andrea, could you get us started here and tell us a little bit more about Digital Film Tree, please?
Yeah, so I'm Andrea Niceto. I'm a producer and partner at Cinecode, which is the virtual production arm of Digital Film Tree. We've been doing VFX for a little over a decade, and we've recently ventured out more into the virtual production realm, and we built a tool called StoryKit, which helps storytellers tell their stories in 2D and 3D, and it's a tool that can help users quickly iterate and modify scenes. We've been doing VFX for a little over a decade, and we've recently
I've got your slides ready, Andrea, whenever you.
Oh, okay. Awesome. So good morning. Wait, everyone can hear me, correct? Just want to make sure. Okay, great. So hello, good morning. I will be presenting StoryKit today, and let's get started. Next slide. So what we did something where users can step in and modify their scenes in 2D and 3D, and this can go from pre-visualization to outright production. I actually put an example here of a show we worked on a show called NCISLA. So we did previs for their stunt performer scene, and this we collaborated with them to find out ways that they could best shoot this, and also best practice how they can work with their stunt performer. And on the right, you'll see what actually was shot from that. Next. Anyone can use StoryKit. So we built StoryKit so we can empower storytellers. And this can work for anyone who's working in TV that needs to quickly iterate, or anyone who is creating higher, low budget films to empower anyone who was interested in telling a story and can push the ball forward in real time by modifying things. Considering the current pandemic, this is definitely something that'll work, especially because you don't need to be in the same room to use it, and you can collaborate from anywhere in the world. Next slide. So how are we helping everyone? So we felt that the best way to help everyone was by creating a tool that can be leveraged during any phase of production, whether that be pre-production and barely getting into the depths of production and trying to plan for that, whether the show or production is very VFX heavy, help with virtual cinematography, planning shots, all the way downright to helping editors plan out what they'll do once they receive the footage on set. So this kind of helps them by having things like previs. This helps them put things into a timeline. That way they can start planning out how they'll end up cutting how they'll end up cutting the show or the film that they're working on. And so StoryKit can be used with just simply having an idea. So for example, on the top left, that's actually a showrunner's napkin on a show called Miracle Workers. They wanted to use StoryKit to help them production design, because they're not sure whether they wanted to or they wanted to build something in LA. And so we took their napkin and brought it into StoryKit and then started building the production out on there. And then for the next two images, this is based on a show that was just recently released called Dave on Hulu. And they were looking to leverage StoryKit in a way to help them VFX their scene at the Hollywood Palladium, and also help out with lighting and having a better understanding of how they can create concert lighting. Next slide. So our workflow is fairly simple. You have an idea, you can import or export your own assets, or you can even use pre-existing ones that we provide. There can be a mixture of 2D and 3D in both animation and environment building. And then from there, we provide a virtual camera, which I'll get into a little bit more. Once you shoot your shots and block your scene, you'll have exported content that you can then use. Next slide. So we made it pretty simple. So whether you're importing your assets or using pre-existing ones, we wanted to just provide basic functionality. So by just clicking on the assets and dragging them out to build them, it's not rocket science. It's pretty easy to use. Next slide. And then also for animation, we made it fairly simple. We decided to do two different styles, whether it was just simply picking up objects and having object animation, or having character possession animation, where the user can possess the character, and then any data that they record from that character will then give them keyframes that they can then take to other softwares like Maya. So we wanted to make sure that they can still use that information elsewhere. Next slide. So for our virtual camera, because we do work on various TV shows, we wanted to create something that they can use with precise accuracy, so they can customize the camera to the camera that they're going to use on set. And then from there on out, the camera provides metadata, and that metadata will then tell them like what the camera's distance was, the focus subject, the lens they used, the frame rate, and it provides them all this information so that way they can apply it once they get to set. And I have one more slide, I believe, and then okay, so the mini map. So this is a tool that we created inside StoryKit. So also with every exported shot, it comes with a mini map that will then show them where the camera is moving within the location and where their performers are moving as well. And this helps them get a better idea of where everyone is relative to the space. And this is also then used in production. And that's about it for me. So I'll be around if anyone has any questions. And yeah, thanks, guys.
Awesome. Thank you, Andrea. That was great. I feel very inspired to go build a story, and I can't wait to learn more about your process. So I just want a quick reminder for speakers, because I realized I forgot this. If you have muted yourself, you need to go back to host tools to hit megaphone again. So when you're on stage, just make sure that megaphone is on. And next up on stage, I would love to welcome Melissa and Clay from the Wild, and so we can hear a little bit about what you are building. So
yeah,
go for it.
Everybody hear me okay? Hi, I'm Clay. I'm going to get started, and then this is Melissa. She's not wearing the t-shirt like I am, but
I showed up late. I didn't get my t-shirt.
Cool. Well, next slide. Now you know what we look like. So the Wild, what is the Wild? The Wild is a collaboration platform for architects and environmental design teams to work together in augmented and virtual reality. And obviously, you can do that remotely from anywhere in the world. What is the Wild? Where is the Wild located? I'm the marketing communications director. I've been with the Wild for 2 years now. We launched our product September of 2018, so I was there alongside Melissa to launch the product into the world. And we're a 12-person team. We're based in Portland, Oregon area, so it's a great place to live and work. Obviously, we're working from home, but we work well together, and we're small, nimble, and mighty, and we're really excited to be here today speaking about collaboration, because that's what we do. Next slide. So just a little bit about why we're doing this and why we've chosen spatial design as the area that we're focused on. We believe that collaboration in 2D is really difficult, and it would be almost impossible really to catch errors early and make critical decisions that you need to make on your 3D models and spaces. So if you're going to be building something and going to construction, it's much easier to catch those problems and communicate those when you're doing it at a human scale. So that's the best benefit there. 2D is kind of a really inefficient way to talk about 3D, right? So it's another way to have these design reviews and shorten those cycles. Design reviews are really, can be really expensive and frustrating, especially if you're working with clients and stakeholders. There's actually change orders and change fees and problems and delays in the construction if you have miscommunication. So when you're communicating immersively, you can really speed up those design reviews. Another thing we're excited about in the Wild is that you actually can prototype and iterate in real time. So in the Wild, we have some native design tools that you can prototype out, mass objects, you can work together, you can come up with ideas quickly and kind of run things by each other with your team. So it's a really quick way to iterate in real time together. And then finally, we'll be talking about this more on the panel, I'm sure, but you know, right now, especially with COVID, there's really no reason to have an in-person meeting for design reviews, at least at this point. If you can immersively get together inside the design and have those conversations, you're reducing the need to get on an airplane or in the car or go to a meeting. You know, you should not be traveling an hour for a design review meeting. You can do that right in the Wild. This is obviously going to decrease travel costs, which is going to be really important to do in the future, especially in a down economy. And finally, you know, allowing people to work where they want to work, anywhere in the world, and unlock those opportunities to work remotely. Next slide.
Okay, can everyone? Yes. So Clay, thank you for the overview. So when we talk about the product, what is the Wild? It's a series. The Wild provides architecture and environmental design teams with an unlimited amount of workspace. The Wild is a series of virtual workspaces that you can use with your team. You can bring in your 3D models. So for a lot of our customers use SketchUp or Revit for creating built environments. So we have native integrations with those platforms so that you can pipe your 3D model right into the Wild, and then you can experience that model at scale before it's built for better decision making. These spaces are persistent, so they live in the cloud. You can access them from VR, we have an iOS app that allows you to view it in AR, and then we also have just desktop viewers for collaborators that are using PCs or Macs. And as Clay said, you can iterate and prototype as you go. So you can bring in 3D objects, you can sketch, you can mask things out so that you can really easily kind of prototype out experiences and ideas on the fly. I mentioned cross-platform support, so people can join from any device, from anywhere in the world. And then we have native VR tools for sketching, massing. You can view object metadata with our inspect tool. You can, there's kind of presentation tools that allow you to kind of control the people in your space. There are cameras and kind of layer visibility tools that allow you to create a really dynamic and interactive space. We also have things like video support, and we're working on, bringing browsers into the space so that you can really, it's really more than just a 3D model viewer. You can really create an interactive experience in there. Next slide. So enough words. This is what the Wild looks like. As you can see, there's a 3D model on a tabletop in our workshop, and you can see there's people at, we're looking at this in kind of dollhouse view, but then you can see there's people down there at a smaller scale in the model. Next slide. Here's Clay viewing from our desktop viewer, which really allows collaborators to kind of view from anywhere. So you don't have to have VR, because we know that that's still a bit of a hurdle for a lot of people. Next slide. And then here's our AR viewer, our iOS app that allows you to kind of place a model in your physical environment, which is great for things like construction, or even just for, meeting on the go. I can't remember if there's another slide or not. Oh, I thought we had another product image, but that's an overview of the Wild.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I love that cross-platform functionality. That's so essential these days. So I can't wait to play with it. I haven't gotten a chance to yet.
Oh, awesome.
So thank you, Clay and Melissa. We're going to bring you back up in just a moment for discussion.
Great.
But before we do, I would love to welcome Inga of Tabori to tell us a little bit more about what she is building. So come on up, Inga.
Everybody, I hope that I have all the right settings for the speaker. So next slide. I'm glad to have Victor here as well in the first row. Why we should do something spatial if we are building for spatial environment, and that was the whole idea of building Tvori, because we ourselves were experiencing those challenging that when you're transitioning from the desktop to VR or AR, it's really very costly. It costs you time. It brings communication gaps, and overall seems like inefficient because you're building on 2D flat screen, something that your users are going to experience spatially. And communication gap become like a very important issue, even if you're a very advanced Unity developer and you can program your interfaces and your product, you still want to communicate your ideas pretty early to your stakeholders and visualize and ideate spatially. So that's why we built Tvori. Next slide, please. And with XR creation tools, you really can be very productive, meaning that you can, it's so intuitive. Thanks to VR as a whole, as a technology, we interact with 3D objects like we do in real life. I have here some models. You can see on the right, and you can grab things from the menu. You can take the brush and model your stuff. So you really become much faster in visualizing and creation. Martina was talking today about diversity, and with Tvori, we think that we really democratize this XR content creation industry, because anyone without 3D skills or without programming skills can really jump into the software and start building and animating. So maximum after 30 minutes spending in the tool. So a much bigger variety of talents can join the space and contribute to amazing content and products, and as well as 2D designers. And the last but not least, something that becomes really very important is how successful we are, people who are building those XR projects. When we're meeting our customers or team members and we are trying to explain what we are working on, you know, bringing and just programming stuff, we don't have something to show to our leadership team or our customers. So if you can really visualize something super quickly, you become very effective and agile at the team. Next slide, please. And there's, we have some pretty important features. I will talk about collaboration just in a second. So you can actually leverage VR creation tools not only for prototyping your virtual reality stuff, but also augmented reality, because it's still very important to understand the distance, to understand how comfortable it is for your user to interact with menu, and through simulate the reduced field of view of AR devices. And this is all you can do in Tvori. But definitely we understand some limitations of VR creation tools, and we understand that it has to be integrated to the final production workflow. And thus it's like the open ecosystem. You can import your assets and models, and you can export to engines like Unity and finalize and add logic and interactivity. So next slide, please. And I have Cody Char from Facebook here. He and his team are using Tvori. And the fact I've chosen Cody for this slide is that we realized that he and his team can become even more successful. So when the lockdown happened, it turned out that he's exporting some Tvori videos and add them to the Google Slides, or let's say you can create GIF and add them to their presentation. But it's interfaces and ideas you're really love actually on a flat screen, right? And in the office, your team members can stay behind your back and look at your monitor, or you can export the VR experience and send it a file. Prototypes on PCVR or on Quest. So there is a whole bunch of optimizations we had to do. And you can invite your team members and your leadership to join some annotations and talk between different scenes, scroll animation, play animation, have like slideshow, or more like just pitching your story. So I think I have the more or less the last slide left. So we have a special Tvori world here in Altspace, and if you have some questions, myself and Victor are happy to talk more about prototyping your apps and products for VR or AR, all within virtual reality. Thank you very much, and thanks for the invitation.
Fantastic. Thank you, Inga. And we are going to have a teleporter available to check out that Tvori world right after the main program. So please stick around and get a first-hand experience with some of what you can build in Tvori. So now I'd like to welcome all our first presenters back up to the stage for a little discussion. So if you could all come on back up. I actually think I might stay out here just to make sure I don't block anyone. So if that's okay, I'm going to just kind of stay over here to the side. And I'm going to kick off this conversation with a few questions, but I also love to hear some questions from the audience. So you should all have the ability to, oh, let me make sure I turned it back on actually. I'm going to make sure you all have the ability to ask questions. And after, there we go. That is now turned on. So please raise your hand if you have a question, and we will hopefully have a couple time for those afterwards. So first off, a few of you mentioned the pandemic in your presentations, and I'd love to start there and just take a deeper dive into how things have changed. The global lockdown started, and what you're really noticing, both in terms of
There's so much value in being able to be together in a space. I think people are getting a lot of Zoom fatigue, realizing and kind of craving connection. You know, it's not really terribly effective to just have a bunch of little tiny faces on your laptop screen. It's, you know, we all are standing here together. We know how much more immersive it feels to be able to kind of be in a room with people. So we're really feeling that and trying to figure out how to adapt to this new normal. I think we're going to see a lot more opportunity for remote work.
Mm-hmm. So I can add that we also have some observations. So when the whole lockdown started, we started to reach out to our enterprise customers. So are you all set to keep working and prototyping? And it turned out that even like pretty big corporations, their design teams were not equipped to start working from home, actually. And this is the big shelf and the laptop. And some teams were actually PC, VR software, which require the computational power. Now Quest Plus Link does work, but you still need to have the PC. So it took time, and definitely it's clear that the future of the whole XR industry probably related to standalone. And also our customers started to say, you know, it seems like we are not very good in communicating now the progress, and the team reviews via Zoom are good for some basic stuff, but when you're pitching against spatial interfaces, they used to gather as a team and like presenting, putting a headset to the manager and then standing behind the back in the office and explaining what's happening. This is how they presented their ideas from Tvori, and we realized that it's not working. It was not ideal from the beginning, but it's completely doesn't work today. And that's why, again, we've built this viewer to allow teams to gather virtually and review all the progress. And this is just the step number one to the full mode collaboration. And it seems like people keep staying at home, and that's why we all have to consider and make them still very effective and productive, because otherwise the adoption of our technology will probably slow down, and this is something we really don't want to see. Thank you.
I was going to say with the headsets. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to add to that. So earlier I mentioned how Digital Film Tree is a VFX house. And so what I noticed even before the pandemic, because we're doing very traditional VFX, when we started introducing our clients to virtual production and using StoryKit, at first their first impression was like, well, I make a TV show. I don't really need game engine tech. I don't really see how I can apply this to my workflow. And then after understanding it a little bit better, I think people became more open to it a little bit after the pandemic, because it was a way for them to continue to work on their shows and maybe iterate on the next following seasons. And I kind of feel like everyone is now crossing that bridge where they want to incorporate virtual production into their workflows, which I think is very fascinating, because it's something that, you know, you try really hard to get people to do this, and then something happens and they just somehow do it. I don't know. It's just it's insane. But yeah, that's my answer for that.
I was just going to add with the headsets. So we found that as soon as the stay-at-home order started going in effect in mid-March, they're on two sides. Our customers were either using VR more because they really needed to collaborate with each other, or they were in trouble because everybody kind of jumped up and left, and they only had maybe a conference room VR set up with maybe a Vive, and the Lighthouse is set up in a conference room that was shared. So we're seeing an increase, as you mentioned, with the Oculus Quest and other standalone devices to try to have it be more of like a at-home headset. Like an individual headsets are going to be more desirable because people are going to continue to work at home. And I think all the evidence shows that people are not rushing back to the offices. And then it's possible that people are going to be working, maybe some will work in the office, some will stay working from home. Maybe people, when they do go back to the offices, will have to stagger their work times because of public transportation being too crowded, or maybe you can't have a certain amount of people in the office. And I guess I'm just wondering if people are going to want to wear masks in the office until the vaccine is available. So I think remote work and collaboration is here to stay. So this is definitely a time where we're going to see an increase in the immersive collaboration space.
Yes, we have certainly seen that as well. And man, Zoom fatigue is so real. So I've been really grateful for my headset during this time. And I'm sure your customers are just so happy that they have a way to continue collaborating effectively right now, because that's so tough.
Yes. Yes.
Well, I would be remiss if we did not chat a bit about 5G. You know, we love our partners at Verizon here, and we've had a lot of fun putting these events on. And I am curious from your perspective how 5G will change the game, both for your companies, but also for XR more broadly. How do you see 5G factoring in?
I can start, and then definitely we all have huge expectations about 5G, and for VR in particular, definitely there is this technical innovation required, so you don't feel any delays, because it really impacts a lot when you are in VR and creating, or it's gaming or whatever. So it's still, even some really microseconds might matter in VR. I think we all were really blown away when Unreal released their product, which is like any highly polygonal model can be there, so realistic, and that was an epic update. And of course, in VR, we are far from that right now, and we are all limited to the computational power of our own PCs. So when the 5G at such a stage, I don't know in how many years from now, but if we can democratize and anyone can have this computational power from the cloud, and you can really do amazing, highly polygonal, realistic kind of stuff in VR, that would definitely increase the adoption. It also has a huge impact on collaboration. So access, quick access, seamless access to amazing computational power and all the resources is very essential, you know, to grow the adoption of VR creation tools like Tvori and the whole industry.
For sure, that is said so well, Inga. Yeah, there's a really beautiful symbiotic relationship there, I think, and I'm excited to see, you know, what 4G did for video. I think 5G can really do for XR, so I can't wait to see that. And we do have a question from the audience I want to open up to. So Digi Eddie, I'm going to turn on your megaphone, and you should be able to ask your question. So you are live, Digi Eddie. Can you hear us? Go ahead and answer your question, or don't answer your question, ask your question. Let's see. I'm not sure. Does anyone else have a question? There were a couple there that disappeared, and you just have to hit the raise hand button if, not the emoji, but the actual raise hand button. That'll allow me to unmute you as the host. Not sure what happened to our buddy Digi Eddie there. All right, well, we might have some more time. Well, let's see, it looks like we had another one come in. Well, we might have some more time for questions at the very end, but I do want to make sure. Yeah, so I see a hand up in the audience. You have to go to the raise hand button, not the emoji, but the raise hand button that allows me to then unmute you as a host. But for now, why don't we give our panelists a round of applause. Oh, I just got a message from our producer too that you'd have to accept the unmute. So there may be a step there we're missing. And we're going to bring up Jonathan. We're going to bring up Jonathan and Lauren because I want to hear from them. So much, and I hope you all can stick around for a bit and say hello afterward. And remember, we do have that Tvori teleporter available. You can check that out. Lauren, if you could please come up on stage. This is a really special treat. So we wanted to talk about the tools today, But we also really wanted to talk about collaboration in action and what that looks like when you're building and creating in XR. And so we have an award-winning XR producer and a founder of Crux Media, which Lauren can tell you more about. But they are the close collaborators and good friends. So I'm just going to let them take over the show. Go for it. Thank you.
Awesome. Everybody hear me okay? Yes.
All right, I'm on.
Send us some emojis.
Yeah, I got you, Jonathan.
Cool.
Okay, so I'm Lauren. I'm the founder of Crux, which is a cooperative of Black artists working in XR technologies, primarily narrative storytelling, told from Black artist perspectives. And Jonathan and I met a while back, and it's been really awesome to collaborate with him on a couple of different projects. But Jonathan, you want to give yourself an intro?
Yeah, so I'm Jonathan Williams. I'm a VR developer, 360 producer, and animator and editor. I am a co-founder of VRX, and we create virtual worlds. Primarily right now, we're creating virtual worlds for different events, kind of like this one, but we're focusing more on like youth.
Cool. So I feel like one of the questions that we always get as Black creators is like, how did you get into this technology? Because there are so few of us working in this space. You want to take that first? Or you want me to go?
Oh yeah, for sure. It's kind of funny because it's probably like the blackest story.
Yeah.
So I was on YouTube one day and I saw Snoop Dogg and YouTube in a laboratory, and they were creating virtual reality, and I didn't understand what was going on, and I had never even really heard of VR. So I just kind of went down a rabbit hole, and right when I saw it, I kind of knew this is the future, like an immersive video where you can step inside of the scene, and from there it was a done deal. A couple of internships, won a couple programs, and here I am standing up on the stage right now.
Awesome. Yeah, and I got my start with the New York Times Google Cardboard that came out. So I really started, I love stories. Like if I could keep my mind straight on anything, I'd be like one of those people who like did a national storytelling competition. So that's how I know, right? It's so nerdy. But I love stories, and I was just at that time I was working in homeless shelters and working with a lot of folks who were poverty, and I just thought, this is just such an interesting way to experience and to sort of, at that point, I was thinking about VR as an empathy builder. Since then, my opinion on that's changed. But I just was really taken by the opportunities of the technology.
Nice. Okay. So since the event is about creative collaboration, what's been the most fun project you've worked on so far, and what makes an ideal collaboration for you?
I feel like I'm in the process of working on a couple of really awesome projects one of the ones is what we're working on with Howard University. So we're building a series of events like this, Institute of Intellectual Property and Social Justice. And they work with a lot of creators to help them get access to intellectual property lawyers. So instead of just talking about it, we're actually going to bring them into immersive spaces to do that. And the other project that I'm really stoked about that's developing nicely is one with all of the living Black Panthers. And so our goal is to do a really large-scale sort of AR exhibit that really brings together all of the amazing aspects of, what could an experience be for folks outside of a museum, a safe AR exhibit, because people really aren't going to be sharing VR headsets in public institutions anymore. So how can we bring these Black Panthers into the technology, partnering with MetaStage, who's really generously offered to help us out, but turn them into holograms so people can hear their stories and interact with them. And it's so relevant right now with the uprising of the Black Lives Matter movement. We really want to make sure that the Black Panthers get their due, in particular since so many of them are still in prison. And we really and I feel like you and I share that. And I know you're working on some dope projects too right now.
Yeah, well, if we're talking about the most fun project, I definitely have to say that I worked with Kyrie Irving on a 360 video for his Uncle Drew film, and that was like just the best experience for the simple fact, and it's also the same reason that I what I think of like an ideal collaboration is, because everybody kind of knew their roles. Everybody was bringing a lot of creativity to it, but everybody knew exactly what they were trying to do. And so there wasn't a lot of like overlap or anything like that. We were all just able to come together and create a really cool project. So
Yeah. And I
that's
know
the
you're a
most part.
basketball head. Yeah, I know you're a basketball head too. What was it like to work with Kyrie?
Um, not to be on some fanboy stuff, but it was cool to see behind the scenes. You see all these guys on TV and everything, and I thought that was the cool thing about the immersive experience was usually you just see them on the court, and you don't really get to see any behind the scenes stuff. And like even the simplest thing, to see him sitting there getting a massage from his masseuse was like, oh, this is cool. This is different. People don't get to see that intimate side of things, and so that's something that XR really brings to the table.
Yeah. Um, and along those same lines, I think a lot about, because I'm also an athlete and I like love basketball so much. One, NextVR's acquisition by Apple is kind of has the potential to be really cool. Like I really got into watching basketball games in VR last year. But I also think about like my own competitive spirit and like how much work you have to put in constantly to sort of stay on your game in VR. And I feel like some of that harkens back to just being an athlete. And I'm wondering like how you're feeling about the grind right now during a pandemic, during an uprising. Like what sort of resources are you calling on right now to keep your creativity going?
Well, they talked about the Zoom fatigue, but Zoom is probably the number one tool that I've been utilizing across the board for pretty much everything. It's a great time to reach out to people because everybody's has like any real excuses, like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm in China right now on a meeting or whatever it usually is. Like everybody's pretty accessible, so that's been like the greatest way I've been able to. I was in track, and my coach would always say that pain is or hold on, let me run this back a little bit. The quote was, "Pain is weakness leaving the body," and so any adversity, I just always look at it as some type of weakness leaving my body,
Yeah.
and just pandemic. But getting through this has put me in a way better place because I mean, this has just been like great.
Artistic spaces and technology spaces for over 3 years now, and the last 2 months have been just crazy. And I actually felt like for a long time I was like the crazy person screaming about immersive spaces and the potential. Like everybody would be like, "What the hell is she talking about?" And now I'm getting how do we create spaces that they can actually access and learn these tools now, because everything has sort of slowed down, so that we can build sort of more holistic, comprehensive, great spaces for everybody. It's just wild to feel all of a sudden like what I was doing is now cool. Like it's a really wild time.
Yeah, so as far as Crux is concerned, what would you say that collaboration at XR looks like, and do you find it difficult?
I mean, so much of our role in is really connecting people to resources and connecting them to each other. And then obviously a lot of what we do is helping Black creatives find access to financial resources to make their projects. And ultimately we really want to make sure that XR is a place where people can tell their own stories and have the financial resources to be able to do that. So collaboration has been, it's really been, I feel really grateful and blessed. I mean, even being in this room, I have like Martina, who's been such a fantastic, I think she was one of the first people I met when I was starting to call people to be like, hey, tell me more about this XR space. But really it's about how do we build community and continue to have these really upfront and forthright conversations about building an industry that really is welcoming for everybody and safe for everybody. So those are the kind of collaborations I'm into. And I think the other thing I've been thinking about a lot, I think the last panelist touched on this, how do we use this time to start developing apps and experiences that are great for everybody, not just like the sort of insular folks who are already familiar with tech. Um, and I was on Twitter a couple weeks ago, and someone said, like, what do you have to do to get more consumers into tech? And I was like, get more Black people in, because we're dope and we make dope stories, and we like, we guide the culture, and there's so much money here. We just drive so much revenue. But Jonathan, what would you say? Like, what's the one thing that you think that we should be doing to like get more consumers into these experiences?
Um, I have to agree on the Black thing. But as crazy as it is, I think that this pandemic was the thing. Like I
Yeah.
couldn't think of a situation that would force everybody to kind of be isolated and need something like VR. I also thought I was that crazy person talking about virtual world, and I was that crazy person to a
Yeah,
certain
we were.
extent.
We were totally
Like
nuts.
I'm using my real hands, but not these. Hold on. And yeah, but now everybody's in VR. Everybody is doing something virtually. No matter what your job is, like you're doing something, you're interacting more online, even if you're just on Facebook more. Like you are literally in a virtual world, at least guaranteed 25% more than you were before. And I think
Yeah.
this is just what VR needed. And I found like a grand uptake in jobs just since March. And it's been
Yeah.
crazy.
Well, speaking of that, like some of the projects you're working on are coming from really like weird places. Like you're working on a project with the Boy Scouts right now, and to me, like they seem sort of like a stodgy. I'm just surprised. I was like so surprised when you told me about that. Can you share some of that work?
Yeah, so and again, it's not even that surprising. They needed a place to bring kids that was like a replacement for summer camp. And so we've been using Mozilla Hubs actually. If nobody's tried that, I highly recommend it. It's very similar to Altspace. Just I will say more creative, like as far as arts and drawing and things like that. But yeah, that came together just because they were looking for a solution. We had been talking about doing some AR with them as far as like badges and other things, and this was pre-pandemic. So once it hit, they were looking for something brand new. And I find that that's kind of been the case with a lot of clients is we were talking about something totally different, but as soon as this hit, they needed a way just to communicate
Yeah.
and stay in contact with each other and still have like something social where it didn't feel weird and everybody's kind of sick of Zoom calls, and they were having a combination of Google Classroom plus Mozilla Hubs, and it's been working out wonderfully. I highly recommend anybody who knows any Boy Scouts to sign up for TriCamp.
That's awesome. That's really, really dope. It's weird to start thinking about like VR as essential service. In some ways, like um, I feel like schools, and when as my wife works for New Mexico Public Schools, the state, and they're really trying to figure out how to sort of provide opportunities for kids. And it is kind of weird to think about. Well, not so much thinking about tech and broadband and stuff like 5G as being an essential service, but just sort of thinking about access to like immersive shared spaces as being essential for like humanity and for our like social mental health well-being.
Right. And I mean, kind of on that same level, it's wondering like how can we even use VR, even as far as creative collaboration is concerned, for students to use this as a tool. And
Yeah.
I don't feel like I've seen too many like schools get too deep into this stuff, but I'm hoping in the fall this will be like an aspect of school that we can all not take
Yeah.
advantage of, but we can all help with.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like the price point's a barrier, but a lot of school districts are figuring out how to buy everybody laptops that aren't Chromebooks because Chromebooks have so many limitations.
Right. And I mean, a lot of these schools at this point have like different ways for you to interact. You know what I mean? It could be mobile, it could be
Yeah.
on a desktop, or it can be in a VR headset. So that's been super helpful, especially for us working with the scouts. Like we haven't
Yeah.
had too many issues.
Yeah. Hey, Martina, how are we doing on time? Do we need to
Awesome.
wrap or?
I'm just so absorbed in this. I love everything that I don't know if you've been seeing my little heart emojis over here, but I've been very excited about what you're saying. And I do want to leave a little time. I know they've had some questions pop in and out. So I just want to remind everyone, if you want to ask a question, there's a little raise hand button in the lower right section of your screen. And that's the button we need you to push in order to ask a question. And we're going to try, so DigiEddy is still top of my list. I'm going to try one more time, see if your megaphone should be on now, and you just have to accept it. I think that may have been the issue before. So DigiEddy, are you able to ask your question? If not, I'm going to move on to PolyZ02. So PolyZ, you should now be on air. You just have to accept that, and you can go ahead and ask. Otherwise, we have some questions from the streaming audience if we're not able to get PolyZ. All right, I'm going to go over to the streaming audience in that case. And Polly, if you are able to chime in, go right ahead. But this is from the Blue Jeans audience, and they ask specifically on cross-platform engagements, how many, oh, excuse me, let me start again. Specifically on cross-platform engagements, many of our clients are looking for virtual event solutions that may engage more on more than one platform. We'd like to bring streams, chat, and avatars across worlds. Is there anyone who offers these capacities? So I don't know if Lauren or Jonathan have any ideas there, or our panelists from
Hubs.
the beginning, feel free to chime in too. Hubs, all right, we've got a plug for
I would
Hubs
recommend
there.
Hubs. Yep, that's my vote.
Yeah.
Altspace works wonderfully too. But Hubs is gonna go across all devices, and we haven't had too many issues with it as far as like whether you have an Android or you have an iPhone or anything like that. So highly recommended. And the team is amazing.
Yeah. But I think the flip side is if you want to do a larger event, Altspace is the place to do it.
Definitely, yes.
So, I think it really is figuring out, what type of event you're needing that you want to do, and really finding a platform that matches your unique needs. And also being willing to sort of flow and flex based on the technology, because, if you design an event that doesn't work with any technology, the event just isn't going to happen. So yeah, but I think we're in a solution right now that really works, and I'm really excited to do some stuff with Hubs as well.
Also,
So
feel
true.
free to hit us up anytime if you have any questions. So if you want to like ask more questions about Hubs, like check that out right there.
I actually have a suggestion for like more ways you can connect if you guys are taking suggestions.
Go
Oh,
ahead.
yeah.
Sure.
Rec Room is another good one. Or
Oh, yeah.
VR chat may not be as friendly, but I don't know, just something to think about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Lauren's point about experimenting with different tools, different platforms, and figuring out what works for your specific objectives is so important, because each one has different secret sauce and capabilities. So yeah, Rec Room is another great option as well. I'm gonna try. So it looked like we had someone who had success with the question tool, so that's great. Dave, did you have a question? You should be able to go on air now.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to put my input in about like streaming to like a lot of different platforms. Everyone probably knows it. There's a site called restream.io,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean this can be cross-platform. Sorry for my accent. But I mean you could put a video player up here and stream even in Altspace. You could do it on another platform and cross-stream it through every single platform you can imagine, and it's pretty good. I mean, you could throw in OBS Studio and have live feedback. You can have comments. I mean, it's a great thing if
Yeah.
you've tried it before. And I mean, it works with every platform as a live sort of. I mean, you could have a camera bot up here, and you could stream to another platform. You could have live comments.
Cool.
If
Very
nobody
cool.
knows about it, have a little check. It's a great service, and it's free.
Dave, what was that service called? I don't think everyone could hear. I'll repeat it with a megaphone.
Yeah, I'm Irish, so my accent is really terrible.
Oh, no worries. I think it was an audio
noise-
issue.
No, it's the accent on the noise cancellation in the West. It is restream.io, like input output. It is a great
Okay.
service.
Awesome. Thank you. That's great to know about. Well, we are running up to the end of our official. I want to encourage everyone to stick around. Our panelists are going to be out and about, and they're wearing some t-shirts, so you should be able to see see their brands on their t-shirts if we still have those. You can figure out who they are. But could we please have a big applause for all speakers today? Thank you so much for your time and expertise, and thank you for what you're building and putting out into the world, really making the ecosystem stronger. And there's a in the back, so if you go to the back of the space behind the bleachers here, you should be able to teleport both to a space to mingle and to the Tavori world. So be sure to check that out. And thank you all again. We're going to unmute you all so everyone can mingle and chat. And we will have a video of this available for those of you who weren't able to join us live. So thanks again. Bye.
Oh,
Anyone wants to join the
really great.
Tavori?
All of you.
Yeah.
Let me turn my
Dimar,
let me turn my megaphone off.
And
Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
Thank
the
you.
Tavori,
Thank
the
you.
Tavori teleporter is right in the back. So if you go to the back